first question. Marillion's new studio album Sounds That Can Be Made. Can you tell us something about the working process behind it?
Oh gosh, wow, that's a long question. I mean, that could be a long answer. Sounds That Can't Be Made. Yeah, it's a. I think we're all very proud of it. I think it's an album that shows a kind of maturity in where we are. It's got a very diverse sounding selection of songs and music, and we took quite a long time. We took about 3.5 years to sort of get round to working on the album, because we didn't spend 3.5 years constantly working on the album. What we did do was we started doing some jamming and started doing some writing, and then we really, we found out that actually we weren't enjoying the process, and it was becoming difficult to work together. So we had to take some time away, and we did a tour with Deep Purple, which was lovely. We did a tour around Germany with Deep Purple, which was fantastic. Oh, right. And then we went back and we spent a bit more time working on, and it started to get a bit better. We had to kind of find a way to enjoy music again. I know it sounds weird, but after 30 years in the band and after so many albums, we were we just needed a bit of time away to sort of get back to enjoying writing and being creative. And eventually, it started to fall into place, and we had a really, really good producer called Mike Hunter, good friend of ours as well, who was just fantastic and kept us on track and was really, kept the morale up and was really keeping us focused on what was good and what we, what he thought was being creative and innovative. And the end result is amazing. I mean, a lot of fans are now saying that they think it's the best album that we've done. So
it's definitely one of your best.
I'm just doing an interview, sorry.
Are you enjoying the Sounds That Can Be Made tour? The recent tour?
Yeah, no, it's really good. Having gone through all of that process of, having a difficult start to the writing process of the album, then, after working on something for 3 years, you get to a stage where you're not really sure if it's any good anymore, and it's always a bit nerve-wracking when you release something to the public. But now that we've been on tour for a while, we started in June in America. We went to Scandinavia, North Europe in July. We had August off. In September we went to South America, so we just come back from South America. And then I had a week off, and now we're here in sort of mainland Europe, and we did England as well. And the fans loved it. A lot of fans think it's the best album we've done, so that's very nice. And it's nice to actually be playing to people and seeing the reaction each night. And so we're very pleased. Yeah, very pleased where we are at the moment.
You are primarily a bassist, but you are also known to write keyboard parts during your time with Transatlantic.
Yes.
And you also played acoustic guitar on Marillion songs, particularly Fate, and Now She Will Never Know. Do you enjoy jumping into different roles as a musician and songwriter?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I've been a bass player for years, but primarily I'm a musician. And the reason why I like to just be a musician, I'm interested in all. I'm a huge fan of music, really. It's my love of music that got me interested in piano. The first thing I ever played was piano. We had a piano at home, and my dad used to play jazz piano. And I grew up listening to jazz actually. I grew up listening to big band jazz and Oscar Peterson and Count Basie and Artie Shaw and all of that stuff. And Nat King Cole, fantastic Nat King Cole, amazing. But at the same time I was listening to the Beatles and, you know, I was very lucky to grow up in the 60s, so I sort of grew up when music grew up and, you know, got the Beatles and the Who and the Kinks and all of those bands, and then, you know, later on there was Led Zeppelin and then rock started out, and then I discovered Yes and Genesis, and while I was doing that I stopped playing piano and I learnt to play guitar, and then I moved on to bass guitar because my best friend, we sort of wanted to form a band together when we were teenagers, and he was a better guitarist than I was, so I moved on to bass, and I love bass guitar. I love being a bass guitar player. It's a unique position in a band. You can be musical, but also you can sort of tie down with the rhythm, so it gives you a lot of scope if you want to use that. But I just, you know, I love all kinds of music. I learnt to play clarinet as well. I play clarinet. I used to play clarinet in an orchestra, and that's quite interesting. I used to play second clarinet, and those are the sort of parts that you really notice what the arrangement of an orchestra is doing and why certain pieces of music are so powerful, and that's one of the things that I love about music. I love arranging. You know, I like the way that arrangements in music can be more powerful than just, you know, it's not just about loud music and it's not just about tempo, it's about a power that an arrangement in music can give you. And a good example, I think, really is you know, some of the most powerful pieces of music still are classical pieces of music. You know, some of the Planets by Holst and you know, Romeo and Juliet and various other bits of music are just really, really powerful, because it's emotion. At the end of the day, it's transferred from music to emotion, and if you can do that with your music and with lyrics as well, and that's what we try and do in Marillion, you know. So that's why I'm interested in other instruments, is because sometimes I can hear something that I think could be brought to the music, and it's always better if you can actually play something rather than just try and describe something to somebody.
Is there anything special left you still wish to accomplish as musician and band member?
Oh, there's always things you want to do, aren't there? Yeah, I'd like to do some solo stuff. I've always wanted to record an album of just me, you know. I'm thinking of doing it. I write songs myself as well. You know, when you're a creative person, you sort of don't stop being creative. And if I'm not working with Transatlantic or Marillion or Edison's Children or Kino, I'm sat at home, and if something comes into my head, I just have to write it. Otherwise it just gets stuck there and blocks other things from emerging. So yeah, I'd like to do a solo album, I think. I'm probably thinking of doing that in the next few years. Probably with acoustic instruments, maybe just acoustic guitar and voice. I don't know. But yeah, there's always things on the horizon that I'd like to do.
While working with Project Edison's Children, you also had some success on American commercial radio charts.
Yeah.
With single A Million Miles Away. Did you find this surprising?
I did.
Yeah,
I did. I was really surprised. It's okay. I mean, we had the album is primarily a sort of a slightly more rocky commercial, rocky sort of progressive album. It really, I think we really wanted to get the feel of kind of early, you know, I remember back in the really early 70s or maybe even the late 60s, there were sort of some interesting bands that would just be doing slightly more raw version of what became progressive music. And that's what we were trying to do, really. We were trying to tie those kind of sounds together. But in amongst all of that, you know, I'm a pop fan. I'm a huge fan of pop music. I always have been. And we ended up with a couple of commercial songs. There's one song that we may be releasing later in the year, or early next year. But a million miles away, we decided that we would release to radio in America. And it was mainly because Eric had already had some success a few years ago using a radio plugger. And it's a guy that you pay him, I don't know, so many $1,000. I think we paid something like $4,000 or $5,000 for his services. And he goes around to all the different radio stations and just tries to get the song played. And we had a lot of success with that. And I was surprised because that kind of thing, you know, you don't really expect it. But it's quite nice. It was very nice. It was a nice little pat on the back, really.
How are you enjoying your recent work with progressive rock supergroup Transatlantic?
Yeah, that was a nice thing. I remember when the band was formed, and Mike phoned me up. Well, he emailed me actually. In fact, he emailed Steve Hogarth about something else. And at the bottom of the email, he said, "Oh, I'm thinking of putting a pet project together, and I was going to ask Pete if he'd like to play bass." And Steve asked me in front of everybody else. He said, "Oh, Mike's wondering if you'd be interested in working with him." And I said, "Yeah." So I got in contact with Mike, or Mike got in contact with me, and then I found out that it was going to be with Royner and Neil. And Royner and Neil both sent me some demos of songs. And Neil particularly, I mean, he was in Spock's Beard at the time, which was a fantastic group. And I started listening to a lot more of what Neil did. Because I wasn't really aware of Neil Morse actually at the time. And then he sent me this CD of demos. And he said, "Sorry about the bass playing on them." And but his bass playing was great, actually. I mean, he's just an all-round fantastic musician. He really is. Puts me to shame. But you know, one of the things I realised was that it was going to be kind of quite riffy and quite kind of, I don't know, fast and furious. And it's not really what I do. And there was lots of really fast piano runs where he'd also had the bass following lots of keyboard lines and things. And so I phoned Mike up and I said, "Mike," I said, "are you sure I'm the right person for this?" I said, "Because I'm not a riff player, you know, I just kind of groove around and do what I do." And he said, "No, trust me, it's going to be great, you know, it'll really work out." And so then we scheduled to do some recording. Late, when was it? Late, oh my God, when was I 40? What are we in now, 30? Late 2000, I guess. Middle of 2000, I think it was. And I broke my leg. So and I thought, that's it. I was lying in hospital thinking, that's it. They'll do the recording with somebody else. But they didn't, they postponed the recording. Mike was insistent that I was the bass player, which was really nice. And I get on well with Mike. I mean, Dream Theatre supported Marillion a few times in their early career, which is how I know Mike in the first place. And so I went to New York, and we had a week. That's the other thing, because I said to Mike, I said, you've only got recording scheduled for a week. He said, "Yeah." He said, "That'll be fine." I said, "Mike, we can't make an album in a week." I said, "We take years in Marillion." He said, "Yeah, we do with Dream Theatre as well." He said, "But trust me, we will." And we did. We got the bare bones of the thing recorded in a week, and it was great. And it's a completely different way of working, and it allows you to show off and just be kind of a bit more free-spirited, and it's lovely. And it does a great job for me. It sort of frees me up, and it allows me to do things that I probably wouldn't necessarily get away with doing in Marillion. But it's I think of it as a very different thing to Marine. And I really love what we do with Marillion. And it's nice to, it's nice to go away and do things and then come back and enjoy and respect what Marillion is and what Marillion does.
Are you planning to someday continue your work with other side projects like Kino?
Oh yes, I do. I'm constantly talking to John Mitchell, and once every 6 months we'll have the conversation about, so when are we going to get together then and do another Kino album? And it'll always be, well, John now is a very overworked producer. He produces lots of sort of indie English bands, and he's really busy with it rights as well and loads of other things. So yeah, he's a pretty good busy guy, and as you can imagine, I'm a pretty busy guy as well. So we just haven't had the time to get together, but we do want to do another album. And I want Chris Maitland to be the drummer and John Beck to be the keyboard player as well. But we'll have to see how it all pans out.
Let's go back to Marillion. What are your favorite memories as a band member? When were you really proud that you are a member of Marillion? Really?
Well, it's strange.
Moment.
It really is strange because my proudest moment, one of my proudest moments was obviously signing a record deal. Because for years I'd been dreaming about being in a band, and then I got into local bands, and then I got into Marillion, and there was talk of Marillion, getting a record contract, and we met a few record labels, and we got ourselves a manager, and we got ourselves a guy who wanted to publish us, and then you sit down and you sign your record label, you sign to a major like EMI, and it should be the best day of your life, because that's what I've been, that's what I thought my dream was to be on a record label and be signed to EMI, and then I walked out of the meeting where we'd signed, and it was like, nothing's really changed. It's still just me in a band, so it is funny. I guess hearing ourselves on the radio for the first time. I think the first time I heard ourselves on Radio 1 was with Garden Party. Garden Party got in the charts, and we were recording. I think it was released early, wasn't it, Garden Party? Because we were still finishing off the recording of of the album Script for a Jester's Tear. And if my memory serves me right. And Garden Party, I knew it was played on the chart show, and I remember us all standing outside in this car park, listening to it with the car on a car radio, because it was the only radio we had at the time, and all the doors were open and all the speakers were blaring out, and that was a great moment. Other great moments we've had, supporting Queen was an amazing thing. So we supported Queen in Germany and in 86, yeah, and in France and a couple of other places, and it was It's a Kind of Magic tour, and that was quite an event. And then going to Brazil, we went to Brazil and did Rock and Rio with. We supported Bon Jovi on that tour, on that show, and that was really good. And we had an amazing time. We spent a week in Rio de Janeiro, and it was the middle of the summer, and it was fantastic. And more recently, actually, I think these days, we're a bit older, we're a bit wiser. We know a lot more about the music industry than a lot of people do, because we've been through it. We're now in a situation where, we're in charge of our destinies. We control what we do and how we do it and how we want to be. And because of that, the success we have these days, although it might not, it might, in commercial terms, be dwarfed by what EMI could do with the power of the big EMI label and all the money that they had available and all the power they had available to them. The successes and the achievements that that we have these days and what we aspire to is somehow much more rewarding, you know. And we're slowly, you know, working towards getting all our catalogue back and getting all the masters back of songs, and trying to be in a situation where going forward we can do things in an even better way. So, you know, it's all good. Things change, and also in the early years, although we were doing some amazing things, we used to be on the TV all over the world, and we'd be flying around in private jets, doing interviews here, there and everywhere, and tours and what have you. You're so tired and you're so overworked by record labels that there isn't any time to enjoy it. You know, the next thing, all you're worried about is the next thing. You might be in the middle of some amazing triumph. I mean, here's a good example. When Kayleigh was in the charts, Kayleigh was climbing up the charts in the UK and around Europe, and we were on tour at the time. And every Wednesday and every Friday and every Sunday, there'd be we'd hear the news that yes, it had gone up the charts a bit more, and there'd be more bottles of champagne, and people would be flying in to congratulate us. Well, all we were really thinking about is we knew EMI would need another album. You know, the EMI. The main people involved in our label were saying, well, we're going to need another album next year, and when do we want to book a studio, and have we got any songs written, you know? So you're really thinking about the next big thing. But I remember flying back to the UK the week after the single had been #2 in the British charts, which was an amazing achievement. And we flew back to the UK about a week after that. I remember walking around my local supermarket thinking, well, you know, that was an amazing achievement really, but nothing's really changed, you know. I'm still, here we are, it's still me, I may as well be in my bedroom, you know. So it is a strange thing really.
Can you name your favorite Marillion albums?
My favourite Marillion albums? Yes, I can.
Maybe one or two.
I think, I think Brave was an iconic album for us, because Brave was the first time really when we, here we go. I guess I should start with, although I think Clutching at Straws was a great album. Although I think Misplaced Childhood was a good album, and it did a lot for us. I think Clutching at Straws was a better album. Musically it was stronger, I thought. And then Fish left and we got Steve in, and I think Brave was the first time really with Steve where the band and Steve actually started to gel and actually started to write songs properly and arrange songs properly. And we had Dave Meegan involved, and that was a great process. But a better album, because of Brave, I think the album after it, Afraid of Sunlight, is actually a better album. It's got better songs on it. And I think Anarachnophobia. I think Radiation is a strange album, because Radiation was really trying to do what Anarachnophobia did. What Radiation was trying to do was to try and allow us to change and allow us to tear down the Marillion sound and rebuild ourselves. And bands, you know, if you're going to have a longevity and a long career and be seriously considered as artists, then you have to do that. You have to be allowed to do that. And Radiation didn't quite work. We hadn't quite got it correct for Radiation. But with Anarachnophobia, that was really what we were trying to do with Radiation, but we did it better. We changed the way we sound, we changed the way we look at music and how we write, and because of that, the acceptance of Radiation and the way that we'd moved ourselves on business-wise and started selling direct to fans, that allowed us to move into the period of Marillion, which I think we've just on the edge of now. I think I think from Anarachnophobia to Marbles, or to Happiness is the Road, was a period that Marillion had gone through in the same way as the first 4 albums with Fish, or the next few albums with EMI. And I think now, Sounds That Can't Be Made is, strangely enough, the starting point of something new. Because I can see with this album that although it took a long time and although it was a difficult album to make, the songs are stronger and the writing is better. And we're much more creative on this album than we have been on the last few albums.
It's also very different than the previous one, than Happiness is the Road.
Well, all albums are going to be slightly different to the last one because, you know, you first and foremost you're trying not to be repetitive, but also there's a kind of a, you know, you almost have a backlash about what you just did before and you want to do something very different. So there's always going to be that element of the next album sounding different.
Do you have any special message for our readers? That's the last question.
Yes, I do. If you're anyone who isn't quite aware of Marillion or not quite sure what we're doing or where we've been or what we've been doing since Fish left, all of our information and everything that we do and what we're about is on our website, marillion.com. Please feel free to have a look around the site. There's stuff you can listen to, there's stuff you can buy, or there's stuff you can read interviews, set lists, all that kind of stuff. Anyone who is aware of what we do and follows the band, or even contributes to our success, thank you very much. And we very much appreciate the support. One of the great things, the strength really behind Marillion is the fans. Our core fan base is our strength. They are the people who put 100% of their faith in us and trust in the fact that we will deliver what they want or what they would like. And what they would like really is for us to just be the best we possibly can be. And you know, we're very aware of how lucky we are. We're in a very, very unique situation, and we very, very much respect that. Thanks.
A great job.
Just thank you, everybody.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr.
Pleasure.
Ross.
Pleasure.
For taking